how's the vibe in London these days?
It's good. I guess like as normal is these days.
Right.
We had a couple of shows last week in London, and then we just come back from doing some shows in Manchester in the north of England.
Right. I saw you did some shows. I gotta wonder what are those like? Because you did two in Manchester, right?
Yeah, I mean, very, very emotional, very overwhelming. There's just a huge sense of kind of relief and togetherness and happiness and joy. Something that we've never really experienced. It's just sort of like going back to the beginning again in a weird way for everyone. And we're just super blessed that we were able to do that.
Right. I've got to imagine that the vibe. I'm kind of curious as to how because I know you guys were here in Auckland just in 2019, in April of 2019. So you were doing all this stuff, and then everything's coming to a halt. Now it's restarting again. Is it different when you're out there doing it again?
I think it feels like people are more supercharged. Everyone's vibe is. It kind of feels like a reawakening and a bit of a rebirth in terms of people's kind of social lives, and I do actually think that will reflect in art. I think there'll be like once we've kind of managed to curb the worst of this pandemic, I think we'll see a bit of a cultural golden age, especially in theatre and the arts.
Right. Okay. Very good. So the tracks that comprise Loving in Stereo, I'm assuming that they were created and thought of before the pandemic.
Yeah, we actually finished recording the bulk of stuff at the end of 2019.
Right.
We did a big session recording all the strings and the choir and the brass at Paul Epworth's studio in North London called The Church. And yeah, that was December 2019. And then we kind of had a Christmas holiday, came back, and then it was like, oh, shit's hit the fan.
Yeah.
And actually a bit of a blessing in disguise. We're very lucky that we didn't have any shows or tours in the diary that got cancelled. We've got a lot of friends who were literally about to step out the door and do a whole year's worth of album touring and promo, and they had that wiped off the face of the earth. So, we're very lucky that we were in sort of hibernation mode. And I think it just gave us a chance to have a lot of perspective on the album. And when we came back to mix and master it at the beginning of this year, when we knew that we'd be able to sort of have a release date that meant that we could do some touring on the back of that, the album still felt fresh and even more relevant, I guess, now to a lot more people around the world.
Right. Well, I've got a kind of hypothetical for you. I mean, how would this album be different if it was being recorded post-pandemic rather than pre?
I don't think it would be that much different. I think we set out in 2018, 2019 to make a record that had more confidence, had more energy, felt more uplifting. So I think all of the themes that you hear were sort of born from a place, deep within ourselves. It was a kind of, we need to satisfy that need in ourselves to make an album that felt more outward facing and positive than the second record. We kind of got a bit caught up in our own emotions on that second record. It was very introspective, a little bit moody because we were going through breakups at the time. So yeah, right. I think it was just a natural reaction to that second record was to make something that ended up being Loving in Stereo.
And the other thing that's different between the previous one and this one is you've changed record labels. You've got your own label now. You're not with XL anymore. Is that relevant as far as what we hear on this record?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've just kind of got our mojo back a little bit. When you're with a label, sometimes you can end up like looking to them for the advice on the music sometimes. And these guys aren't songwriters. They're not producers. They don't make records for a living. They sell records. And obviously you're going to get a different set of advice from someone who's trying to sell records as to someone who makes records. And starting our own label and kind of like, flying the nest, so to speak, from XL just gave us a newfound belief in ourselves, a newfound confidence in the art that we make. And, we were able to make 14 videos for this record. And that's something that we as creative people, that really satisfied us. But like no label in the world would have let us make 14 videos unless we were doing it ourselves.
So who came up with that brilliant idea?
Brilliant or stupid, it depends which way you look at it. We all did. It was just something that we've always wanted to do. We've always wanted to have a video collection for the record. You look at the Daft Punk Interstellar 5555 film. That's a massive inspiration to us, to be able to sort of watch a whole story arc for an album. Just super satisfying.
Right. And so as far as visualizing these songs, where do the ideas come from for that?
I guess a lot of the ideas come from the people that you choose to work with, the choreographers, right, the dancers. Charlie, who is our sort of like producer and director in chief, has a really strong creative vision in general when he makes videos. But look, we've always maintained that like making simple videos is the most effective way to do it. And that means like shooting one shot. It means using dancers, because for us that's the most simple format for a video, right? It's like put some music on, dance to it. That's the magic formula for jungle. And we spent quite a lot of time looking at other avenues and exploring different things, but nothing felt right. And I think when we look back in 10, 20 years time on our career as creative directors of this project, then it will be just so satisfying to see that really strong through arc going through everything. And it'll be really satisfying to know that we had the strength and the belief in that to carry it through for the whole campaign. Gotcha.
So you and Josh have been working together for several years now. How has that relationship musically evolved, changed, or does it pretty much stay the same as when you started?
It's very fluid. And I think as we get more confident, we allow ourselves to write with other people, to allow other people to use jungle as a platform for their own voice. We've got two features on this record, Priya Raghu and Bars, who's a rapper from Queens. Right. And they're both friends that we met along the journey of making this record. And, the songs are amazing. So, we're not going to put a feature on the record just to boost Spotify numbers or anything like that. It's got to be a personal connection. Right. And the song's got to be good, and putting this album together at the beginning of this year, we just sort of looked at the kind of 25, 30 ideas that we had kicking around that felt most finished. And we were like, these all feel really good together. So, regardless of where they've come from or who's been a part of making them, we've got to put them on the record.
Gotcha. So how did those collaborations happen? How did the one with Baz happen, Romeo?
Yeah, so we met Bars at a festival in Coney Island in 2018, in the summer of 2018.
Coney Island, okay.
And he came backstage after our show and was just like super into it. We got on really well, had a great time, had a few beers. And then we were recording in London in 2019, and he texted us out of the blue saying like, yo, I'm in town, should we get some food or a beer? And we were like, well, we're in the studio, come to the studio, man. And he came to the studio, and we spent a few hours one evening putting Romeo together, and the rest is history, really. And I think that's just such a special moment for us to have, someone who became a good friend, an inspiration. Obviously, I think his style of rapping is kind of a bit of a throwback. I love the kind of like the old school feel that he has to his music and the way he puts his stuff together and his flow. It's kind of like, it's almost unique now in a way to have an old school flow in modern hip hop. Right. Everyone's just kind of like stuck on this trap vibe, and he's kind of cutting his own path in a way.
Never lose, steady climb, city crime infested. 10 years, so divine my blessings. I injected hope into my lungs and spoke up things I once thought were silly dreams. I walk you through the scene. Jump on a jet and it's charted a star. Bad in the cycle, I don't even like it. She dead it, I cannot be bothered to call. Hope you see the light, darling. Oh yes.
So yeah, just like one of those things that was really fortuitous, serendipity, whatever you want to call it.
And was there much discussion between the two of you? It was like, oh, should we have somebody else featured on any of our tracks? This is the kind of first time you've done it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a question of like, are we doing the right thing? Is it the right thing for jungle? But at the end of the day, we answer that question quite simply with like, well, jungle can be anything. And if we've got the confidence in the music that we're making, like people, our audience can hear another voice and still equate what is coming out of the speakers with something that we've created as jungle. As long as our heart and soul is there, it doesn't have to be our voice.
All right. And then the other collaboration, of course, is Goodbye, My Love with Priya Raghu.
I got a thing, I got a feeling, I gotta say there's a sun that will shine. I gotta burn, I gotta burn it, only to tell you my love.
She was introduced to us by our manager in London. She's based in Switzerland, but she's from Sri Lanka originally.
Right.
And we just heard her voice, and it was just mesmerizing. You know, it's that amazing mixture between Eastern and Western cultures that is so rare to find, and the way that she uses scales and melodies in her writing is something really, really unique. And so when we kind of heard the first couple of demos that she played our manager, we took the chance to jump in the studio with her, and we wrote something for her record. And then literally at the end of the day, we kind of were like, well, we've got a few hours left in the studio. Let's try and put something together super quick. And that's where Goodbye My Love came from.
Okay. So I'm wondering if you can just give me an idea of how you build a track, where things start from. I'll pick one kind of at random, say Bonnie Hill. Does it start with a beat, or does it start with a lyric, or what?
God, if I give up thinking about the future, thought you had enough thinking about the past, 'cause I don't wanna wake up any morning without you. Talk of all our dreams, all the things we'll do. You said, oh, lift your body up, naturally we fall.
Well, Bonnie Hill was actually sort of conceived in LA quite a long time ago, maybe in like 2016 or 2017. We were doing a writing session with our good friend Andrew Wyatt, who used to be in Mike Snow. And he does a lot of writing with Miley Cyrus, and he's just a good friend. And whenever we're in LA, we go to his house and hit record and see what happens. And so the kind of piano and the bass and some of the melodies are sort of born there. And then you bring it back into the studio in London, and you've got it floating around for a couple of years. You're like, you always go back to it. You know, you have ideas that are so good and so strong that no matter when they were made or how they were made, you kind of whenever you're kind of going through your folders of what you want to listen to or what you kind of want to like carry on working on, that was just always one of the ones that got put in the sort of like, need to finish this, need to finish this, need to finish this.
Uh-huh.
And so then you just kind of piece it together. I think a lot of what we do is collage based. You know, Bonnie Hill has melodies from songs that weren't called Bonnie Hill, and you know, the chorus is from something completely different. And then it really came to life when we got the strings and the brass together, and you know, you got the amazing flute and saxophone solos at the end that were sort of just like super off-cuff moments, and really bring it to life. You know, that saxophone's got an amazing like Bowie-esque feel to it at the end of the track that just really takes you back to like a classic era of music making.
Right. Another one I wanted to touch on was Truth, because it seemed it's almost, for want of a better word, a classic rocker in a sense. It has a guitar or a riff in there that kind of jumps right out at you. Where did that come from?
For the first time, when see you wanna prove, now you wanna be mine, you're looking for that instant truth.
Again, another one that was conceived in LA, in our friend's garage. We sort of had the melody. We literally a garage rock track. We sort of had that melody floating around for a long time, but with quite a much more electronic feel underneath it. And then one day Josh just like literally sent me something. He was like, oh, by the way, I just like notched up the tempo to like 150 BPM and sort of tried to make it sound like the Strokes. And I was like, wow, this is cool. This is something new for us. And it really had that moment feeling like, you know, when I first listened to The Suburbs by Arcade Fire, you know, you get to the track Month of May and you're like, wow, is this Arcade Fire? Like, yeah, it is, but it's not. But I love it, but I hate it. And it kind of felt like one of those moments for us. And that song would never have got on record before for us because we just wouldn't have had the confidence in the track. But the track is so good that no matter how it was conceived or what people may perceive it to be, it's still got to be on the record because it's such a good tune.
Right. Well, you mentioned confidence a couple of times. Where is that confidence coming from? Was it not there on the first two records? Is it something that has kind of built around the two of you?
I think we lost it. I think it was there. And then it kind of dribbled away during making the second record, just for a number of reasons, you know, personal issues, going through breakups, struggling to sort of comprehend what we'd managed to achieve on the first album and how we followed that up. You know, that creates a lot of questions in the studio. And I think now we're at an age where the musical tools that we have available to us are much more sort of polished. We're better songwriters, we're better producers. We're not asking questions of our own creativity at the moment. It's just like we don't really. It's not that we don't care about what people think about us. It's just that other people's opinions, as you get older, and I'm sure you are well aware of this. It's like life's too short to sit there. but life's too short to sit there worrying what people think about you.
That's true. Absolutely.
And if you can reach that place of like absolute like self-belief, it's not arrogance. I think it's just self-belief, and we just feel really great at the moment. And whenever we get in the studio now, it's like the first idea is the best. Got to do it quickly. Don't sit there thinking about it. Don't over edit yourself, because you just get stuck in a hole of bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Now, did you also have Inflow working with you on most of this?
I wouldn't say most of it. There are a few tracks that he certainly helped us out with, like Talk About It is one of them. We had a studio session with him and just like rattled through, as you do with Flow when you're in the studio. You're literally just like doing like, you're trying to make 6 songs a day, and then you kind of look back at what you've done, and you cherry pick the sort of best ideas from here, there, and other places. So yeah, he's a massive inspiration. We obviously worked very closely with him on the second record, and I think on this album he'd given us a lot of confidence to go out and really nail it ourselves. But of course, there are still echoes of he's been working on with us throughout that. Right.
I think it's interesting. I mean, you guys are a duo, but if you look at the list of credits that are listed as everybody who's on this record, it's fairly impressive. I mean, it goes on for a while. So there are a lot of people who are a part of this thing and have to be obviously rounded up and figured out who's going to do what and all that. How do you guys, the two of you, manage that?
I think it all feels very natural. I don't think we ever feel like we have to manage it in any way. You just make sure that people get credited where they deserve their credit, and working with a variety of people just gives you more inspiration. I think if we sit there limiting ourselves, if we sit there in the studio going like, no, it's just got to be us two, like we're the only ones that can sing, we're the only ones that can play on the record, like I think we'd have a much more two-dimensional album.
Right.
As musicians, when you collaborate with people, that's the sort of like, that's the only way you can learn or grow as a creative person, is by like taking influence from other people, learning, sharing. And that's just been a really eye-opening and enlightening experience this time around.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now the string arrangements are integral to what's happening on the record. How do they come about? Who's responsible for those?
Yeah, so a lot of the melodies are written by us, like either using mellotrons or synths.
Right.
Plugins, stuff like that in the studio. We're like, oh, some strings would be good here. So we'll sort of like very quickly cobble together rough ideas for what the strings are doing. And then we work with a wonderful woman called Rosie Danvers, who then helps us sort of bring it to life in the studio. And she's got an amazing set of string players that she uses on a regular basis. And yeah, very emotional when you're sitting there in the studio watching these amazing musicians play your music and bring it to life.
So I noticed the album begins with a little track called "Dry Your Tears," which is kind of segues into "Keep Moving," and it kind of takes you one segue to another. How much time do you spend sequencing the record?
Some of it happens very naturally. I think we've always sort of loved those concept records like Dark Side of the Moon and Pet Sounds, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, that feel like they're a sort of united body of work instead of a collection of songs. I think the order kind of naturally falls into place. You're always kind of constantly listening to the songs next to each other, or working out which feel. It's all about feel. It's like you instinctively know when you hear the end of one song what the next song should be,
right.
Whether it should be uplifting or whether it should bring the mood down. So we're always conscious of that wave, essentially, and the ebb and flow of how a record should go, because the records that inspired us the most are those albums that have that incredible plot line and incredible through story that kind of carries them from start to finish and makes them a whole piece rather than a collection of different things.
And are you thinking in terms of who's listening to this and how they're going to react and who they are and how it's going to affect them?
I don't think so. I think if we thought about that too much, then we probably wouldn't be as free in the studio as we'd want to be.
Right.
We want everybody. We want everybody to listen to our music. We want everybody to be able to connect with it. So, in essence, yeah, we probably do make we probably do try to create songs that have a very universal message. We try not to make things too singular,
Right.
so that everybody can find something within it. So yeah, in that sense, we probably do. We probably do think, you know, we want at gigs we have 6-year-olds and we have 60-year-olds. So how do you make a song that like is simple enough for a 6-year-old to understand, but complex enough for a 60-year-old to like enjoy and to take many different things from, you know, in a 3-dimensional way.
Yep. So this album kind of feels like a refresh, a restart. Does it feel like that to you?
Definitely, yes. It feels like kind of a new era, which is really exciting because, you know, doing this for as long as we have, it can begin to feel stale in places. But, you know, the pandemic has given us a lot of perspective. You know, I've never been more grateful for being able to do what I do on a daily basis. You know, that's just something that I'll never be able to put into words or quantify, you know. And, you know, it's actually been quite beautiful for us to have this moment to sit back and take stock of everything that we're lucky enough to have at our disposal. And, you know, being able to play music and write music on a daily basis is just like our wildest dream. So why wouldn't we want to carry it on? And yeah, it definitely feels like we're kind of like kickstarting into a bit of a new era of jungle.
So are you thinking ahead in musically what you're going to do next?
Not quite yet. I think we're going to let the dust settle first. But it's definitely going to be along the same vein, man. Like energy, collaboration, fun, and just not overthinking it too much.
No overthinking. That seems to be the key.
Indeed.